On October the 31st, 1517, Martin Luther posted 95 big questions which he believed faced the church of his day to a local church door in Wittenberg, Germany. 500 years later, I decided to post 95 new questions, one a week, to the web, questions which I believe the church must face in the 21st century. So this is it, the last Chalke Talk number 95. I believe that the message of the Apostle Paul, the follower of Jesus, the writer of so much of the New Testament, the influencer of so much Christian thought, can be summed up in one simple but utterly revolutionary sentence, both for his time and for ours. It's this: we're all in now, let's live like it. But, it's argued, if this is true, if everyone's in, then why did Paul spend so much of his life travelling and preaching and writing and enduring constant threats and frequent rejection, enduring imprisonments and several shipwrecks, not to mention eventual execution? Why didn't he stay at home if everyone's all in anyway? In Hebrew thought, salvation was always a much bigger, broader and more holistic term than it's become in its English religious use. It was all-encompassing. It was about down-to-earth liberation or shalom. It was about us being made whole right here, right now, as well as a hope for the future. The New Testament's word for salvation, the one that Paul used, meant to rescue from danger, to deliver to safety. It referred to health, to well-being, to wholeness of life. Our problem is that we get confused into thinking it was all somehow to do with life beyond this one, even though in our very usage, our use of the term saved, once we're not thinking religiously, is still wider. For instance, we use it to speak of a goalkeeper who saved a shot on goal, of money saved in the bank, of a person saved from a bad relationship. For Paul, just like for all Jewish thinkers, the spiritual, as we like to refer to it, was never detached from the material, the here and now. In other words, the multi-dimensional offer of well-being that the Bible brings to us is about life after birth, not just life beyond death. Now, back in the 16th century, Martin Luther, the great reformer, looked at medieval Catholicism and he didn't like what he saw. It had become a system of control. It created and then it abused power. It excluded. It induced a sense of shame, of fear and of guilt. So in reaction, he proposed a reformation. But the problem was that this new Protestant teaching, this Reformation, was soon to produce another system of control. It created and then abused power. And tragically, so much of it still does. It still excludes. It still induces shame and fear and guilt. It still commands us, do this, do that, believe this, believe that, or else you're out. It's time for a new reformation. It's time to find a way of following Christ which offers liberation rather than control, grace rather than fear, inclusion rather than exclusion, welcome rather than rejection. As Paul, the great includer, says himself in Galatians chapter 5, for it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. And then he warns, stand firm. Do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. And it's only having established this great truth that Paul goes on to explain, for instance, in his letter to the Colossian church in what we know as chapter 3, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, as people who are in, clothe yourselves with compassion and kindness, with humility and gentleness and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone else, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Paul, the follower of Christ, believes that the way we live matters. Not as a means of proving ourselves or our worth or our faith to God, as a means of getting in, but rather as an outcome of what is already true. Since you're already counted in, Paul is saying, live like it. However, he's also clear that we're never left to achieve any of this on our own. We're not doomed to live off our own supply of self-perpetuating energy. The fruit of the Spirit, Paul explains, the fruit of the Spirit of God is love and joy and peace and forbearance and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. As he wrote to the church in Philippi, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever's right, whatever's pure, whatever's lovely, if there's anything excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. The God of peace will send his Spirit to you. So, the message is this. If there are habits and behaviours that have no place in God's kingdom, they're habits and behaviours that have no place in our lives, and no place in the businesses and community activities over which we have influence. Our personal code of ethics, our corporate investment manual, should reflect, indeed will always reflect, who we really are and who we're becoming. Paul summed it up brilliantly. Once again, writing to the Philippians, in chapter 3, verse 18, he says, "Let us live up to what we have already attained." We're all in, now let's live like it. So that's it, the last Chalke Talk. 95 ideas, 95 questions, the last of which is this. If the Apostle Paul's teaching can be summed up as, we're all in, now let's live like it, is this a basis for a new reformation, a way of following Christ which offers liberation rather than control, inclusion rather than exclusion, grace rather than fear, and welcome rather than rejection? Over to you. What do you think? I explore this issue more deeply, as well as many others raised by the Apostle Paul's writing in my new book, The Lost Message of Paul. You can purchase your paperback copy today from openchurch.network/Lost Message of Paul, or from any good bookshop. An ebook and an audiobook are also available from Amazon, as well as from other online retailers.